midweek, early muzzleloader season. I'm sitting at the opposite end of the farm tonight. I just came quick after work, so I have a real short amount of time just to hunt. As you can see next to me here, there was a tree here. It separated my field of view from the soybean out here, but last year it rotted and it fell over in a storm. So now I have a completely clear view of the field out to the side of me. If I pan around behind me here, now I'm into the woods then. So I have right here, I have a trail there. So sometimes the deer walk right in behind me. This is the first time I've sat in this stand this season. I've been on the opposite end of the property. Now the farmer just passed me a minute ago in his truck. So he was in checking the soybean. I'm pretty sure he's gonna mow his soybean pretty soon. I don't think it's gonna be much longer. That's what he came in to check. He came in to check the fields, make sure there was nothing laying down in the fields where he was gonna mow. You can see it's all brown, it's all dry. The crops are really poor this year. That soybean is only half as high as it should be. The corn too is pretty poor. Very poor, like, crop from it. Now at the opposite end of the farm, the other farmer who farms the neighboring property, he's already mowed his soybean, and I'm pretty sure he's planted winter wheat right in behind it, because the field, I moved the tree stand on Monday night, and the field was already seed drilled, so I'm pretty sure he planted wheat. So that might be good for me late season. I seen 2 deer last night. They crossed the field in front of me, but they were way out of muzzleloader range. 2 big does though. It's cold tonight. Today was a definite big change in temperature from what it has been. This morning when I got up, there was ice on my window, so definite cold snap. I think it's October 18th or 19th today. So usually in this region, rut doesn't kind of start till the end of October, Halloween time, into, you know, the early part of November. That's when the peak kind of rut is here. Now, I already observed a small buck the other day pushing does. So it's still early yet though, it's still pre-rut, I would think. It's not quite cold enough, and the daylight is not quite short enough where they're like in full rut. Like I said, the end of October, start of November. By then it's back to bow hunting only, so. Alright, we're gonna sit and see what we see. See if we see any deer. All I've seen so far tonight is 1 big rabbit and 2 big squirrels. We'll sit tight and see what happens. Well, so far it's a season of near misses for me. I was coming in after work. There was a little lake getting in. I came up over the top of the hill, and I bumped a doe on top of the hill. But she didn't give me a clear shot. I got her to stop, but she didn't give me a clear shot. She was through brush. So I said, I'll sit in my regular stand. The new stand I put up is right down behind me. And wouldn't you know it, I just had 7 deer come down, feeding around right underneath that stand, like 10 yards. All does. One was a button buck. The rest were all does. And they give me, there's only 2 lanes I can shoot clearly through here, and they would not stay in that spot. They just kept milling around. I think they kind of winded me when they got to here, but they weren't really sure. There's not a lot of strong wind. They just got a little bit of current. And the lead doe came to here, and then she stopped it. I thought they were going to come in behind me into the woods, but they didn't. Ay, ay, ay. Man, I watched them for 10 or 15 minutes. No, I could not get a shot. And they were right underneath my understand. I mean, archery range underneath my understand, 10 yards. They went in the spot they usually go. So in the morning, I'll be here before it gets light, and I'll sit down in that stand. I'll sit in that stand. Oh, what are you gonna do? I wasn't gonna take a sketchy shot, shooting through brush. It's not worth that. It's not worth it. I'd rather not shoot and know the deer was okay than make a marginal shot through brush. Especially with a muzzleloader. Muzzleloader's a big heavy bullet, and it can knock a branch, but if it knocks a branch, it ain't gonna end up where you want it to. Yeah, it's just about quitting time. At least I know they've gone in there now. They may go in back into the valley, into the woods, and then they might bed down. Or they could be going up onto the soybean field on top of the hill there to feed. And then they'll come back through in the morning, maybe. Hopefully, we'll see. So many close calls. I seen another 3 deer out in the open field here on the way in. So I seen 11 deer tonight. And I couldn't get a shot at one of them. Wow. Sometimes that's just how it is. What are you gonna do? I'm gonna give it a couple more minutes, and then it's time to pack it in. But we'll be back in the morning, back after him again. Well, here it is. Last day of the muzzleloader, early muzzleloader season, still archery season. And my hunting season has become cursed, I believe. I think my aggravation and my frustration level is now at a maximum. I'm sitting in a new location. On Monday, I'd said in the video I shot last week, I said I wanted to put a stand up on the opposite side of this clearing, and I did that. It's in a good spot, but I've noticed 2 things. I'll give you a look around here if you can see behind me. I got pretty open woods, like immediately below me. Then you can see back there's a ridge that rises up, and then there's a crop field on top of the ridge. And the deer a lot of times will cruise along that ridge. Now I'm pretty much in the bottom of a valley here. Usually my other stand is up almost on the top of the hill there. It's on the side of the slope of the hill, against the other crop field. And if I pan around this way, you can see that used to be a soybean field, but you can see it's all mowed down. So my other stand is actually about there, up in the wood line. So I always see deer moving on this side of this little horseshoe. It's like a little inlet. Now, the hill slopes up this way, so it comes up this way in front of me, and this morning was a little bit of an issue. I'll explain that in a minute. So I made a mock scrape right below me here, 10 yards from the stand. Let me see if you can see it. The sun is probably drowning it out, but it's right there off the end of the point where the tree is hanging right there. So I get in the stand this morning, and it's before light, of course. and I just got I put my bag on my hanger behind me here, and I have my crossbow on this side of me here, and a buck came in right along the edge. He didn't come through the woods, he was actually cruising the edge of the field. He came right along the edge of the field. He just barely passed this mock scrape, and I have a scent can right here, and I have another scent wick over the scrape, and he just passed it, and then he circled right back to it. So he passed me at 10 yards. He gets to the scrape, which is about 10 yards. He messes with the scrape a little bit. He rubs his antler on the tree above it, but it was dark still, and I couldn't see if he had 3 points on him. Another 10 minutes later, if he'd came 10 minutes later, I'd have been able to see him, you know, and make sure he was legal. He was a large-bodied deer. I knew he was a buck right away when I seen the size of his body, but I seen his beams, I guess, were wider than his ears both sides. I could see he had a big Y on top, but I couldn't see if he had a brow tine or not. Like I said, 10 minutes later, that'd have been a different story. So he was at 10 yards, then he came to 5 yards, then he circled around and he followed back into the woods on the end of the field there. Then about 30 minutes ago, 4 does came off the same area, came off right off the point. I think they were following the edge of the field, and it points out on that little edge there. And they came out right in front of me, I'm going to say 45, 50 yards. And I had my muzzleloader, put the muzzleloader up. There's 2 of them that were side by side. I picked the biggest one. I had to wait for one to clear, so she was pretty suspicious. I think she's seen me. And that's the problem with the field, because the field actually rises up in front of me. So I'm almost out. When they're in the middle of the field, they're at eye level with me, if they're not immediately below me. But I think she saw me. She saw me when I lifted up the gun, because she stopped, and then she was starting to do one of these little swagger jobs and then stamping the foot. And I waited for her. She took 2 steps and she came clear to give me a clear shot. And then when I took the shot, all I heard was the primer go off and a little fizzle. It just went It was like, it reminded me of like Elmer Fudd, you know, in the Warner Brother cartoons, when the bullet just comes out the end of the gun and just drops right on the ground. Pretty much that's what it did. I was hunting last night and I seen 11 deer, none of which I could get a shot at. And what I did was, when I left, I hunted after work till it got dark, and then I left my muzzleloader at the cabin. I just took the primer out of it. I left the actual charge in the barrel, and I just took the shotgun primer out of it, and I left it there. And then when I came back this morning, I picked it up and, you know, brought it with me down here. And I done that so it wouldn't condensate, that I wouldn't put a cold barrel in my warm vehicle, and then the barrel warms up and it condensates, and then the powder sucks up moisture. And that's why I left it at the cabin, and I think that's what it did. I'm assuming either the pellet was bad or the pellet got damp. Now it was, I used 2 pellets of Pyrodex powder, so they're like a 50 grain equivalent of black powder for each one, so it's a 100 grain load. But the one pellet must have partially burnt, and then the other pellet came out of the gun and it spiraled like a firework, because it didn't burn completely. And then when I ran a patch through the gun, it was only like partially fouled. So just my luck is not with me this year at all. Very frustrating. I should have had 2 deer already. Just very frustrating. I've only ever once before had an incident where powder didn't burn right for me, where I hunted pretty much most of the day in rain. And I mean, some of it was heavy rain. And then when it stopped raining, the deer came out, and I got, presented with a shot at a deer, took the shot, and just the percussion cap, boom, that was it. No, the powder didn't burn at all. It wouldn't burn. It got damp, and it's like trying to light a fire when you have sprayed the wood with a hose. It just won't. But it will not catch. But that's what it pretty much done the same thing to me this morning. It did burn with the shotgun primer ignited, but the rifle had no recoil, no like felt recoil to it. And like I said, I just seen the spiral of smoke where it just pushed the bullet out and it pushed the pellet out. And I checked, of course, to make sure that I didn't hit the deer, and it didn't. I could see her footprints where she turned and ran. So I checked for hair, checked for blood, nothing, absolutely nothing. It's like, wow, I'm cursed this year. Some years, like last year, it's a breeze. And other years, it's a grind. And this year is a real grind. It is a grind. Now I'm going to get something to eat and swap out my muzzleloader. And then I will probably leave that muzzleloader at the cabin. Now I have zero confidence in it. But I'm gonna go get something to eat, and then I'm gonna come back out and sit this afternoon and see what I see. Hopefully our luck improves. I want to show you something that could be useful. This I use all the time. What it is a little squeeze bottle. This is an old one. I've had it for quite a long time. It's called a windicator. And what it is it's almost like baby powder or talcum powder in it, but it's not scented. There's no odor to it. But it gives you wind direction, so if you shake it and you squeeze it, I don't know if you can see that on the camera or not, but it puts up a little puff of smoke. There, you can see it. And then it shows you your wind direction pretty accurately. You can actually watch it for quite a distance, and then because especially if you're hunting up in the tree, it changes. But this is a very valuable tool. It's pretty cheap to buy. I have 2 or 3 of them. I started using them years ago. But you just give it a little squeeze, and then it puts up a little cloud, and you can watch how the cloud moves in the air, and it'll give you a pretty good indication of what your wind direction is. One issue I noticed with hunting in the hollow here is the wind kind of has a tendency to swirl, because like I said, there's a slope behind me and there's a slope in front of me, so the wind has a tendency to do this. Now sometimes it will blow consistently to one side or the other, but more often than not, it changes when the sun comes up a little bit, and you get more thermal heat on the ground, and then it changes from morning to evening. But that little wind indicator, that's great. It works really well. I like it a lot.